The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. A man stood by his car, calm but cautious, as two police officers approached. "ID, please," one of them said, the request laced with authority. But instead of reaching for his wallet, the man responded with something they didn't expect: a firm but polite refusal. What unfolded next wasn't just a simple exchange about identification. It quickly became a tense standoff, raising questions about rights, authority, and accountability. The officers, visibly surprised by his confidence, began pressing harder, their patience wearing thin. Yet the man held his ground, quoting laws and asserting his rights with a quiet strength that shifted the energy in the air. As the moments ticked by, the situation teetered on the edge of escalating, leaving everyone, officers and onlookers alike, wondering how it would end. Would cooler heads prevail, or was this just the beginning? The man, dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt, remained steady under the officer's watchful eyes. He explained calmly, "I'm not refusing to cooperate, but I need to know if I'm being detained or if I'm free to go." His words were deliberate, measured. The officers exchanged a glance, clearly caught off guard. Most people complied without question, but this man wasn't following the usual script. One of the officers leaned in, his tone growing sharper. "We just need to see some ID. It's standard procedure." But the man wasn't budging. He gently pushed back, asking, "What's your reasonable suspicion?" "Am I suspected of committing a crime?" The street grew quieter, the weight of the conversation pulling focus from anything else. Nearby, a woman walking her dog paused, curiosity piqued. A few neighbors peered out their windows. The atmosphere thickened as the moment hung in suspense, leaving everyone on edge. The officer's expression tightened as he took a step closer, clearly unaccustomed to being questioned. "We're just doing our job," he said, his voice edging toward frustration. The man, however, didn't flinch. He kept his voice steady, repeating, "I respect that, but without a valid reason, I'm not required to show my ID. That's my right." His calm confidence only seemed to stoke the tension. Across the street, an older man watering his garden paused, leaning on his hose as he watched the exchange. He'd seen his fair share of moments like this over the years, but something about this one felt different. The man by the car wasn't combative. He was standing firm, like someone who knew the rules of the game better than most. One officer, younger and visibly uneasy, glanced at his partner as if seeking reassurance. The silence stretched, leaving everyone unsure of what would happen next. The older officer stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt, as if to subtly assert control. "Sir, we can't stand here all day. This is a lawful order. Show us your ID, or we'll have to escalate this further." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. For a moment, it seemed like a stalemate, neither side willing to back down. The man took a deep breath, keeping his posture relaxed but unyielding. "With all due respect, officers, I know my rights. If I'm not being detained or suspected of a crime, I don't have to comply. And if I am being detained, I'd like to know the specific reason." His tone was steady, almost unnervingly calm. More neighbors began to gather, quietly watching from a distance. The young officer's hand twitched, betraying his nervousness, while his partner's jaw tightened. The tension was palpable, like a rubber band stretched to its breaking point, leaving everyone on edge, wondering who would make the next move. Just as the standoff seemed frozen in place, the sound of a car door closing broke the silence. From a vehicle parked a short distance away, another man stepped out, phone in hand, recording as he approached the scene. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his tone neutral but his presence intentional. The officers glanced at each other, clearly displeased by the growing audience. The man by the car gave a small nod toward the newcomer. "I'm fine, just trying to have a conversation about my rights." The older officer's expression hardened. "This doesn't concern you," he said firmly, but the man with the phone didn't flinch. "Actually, it does. Public servants conducting public business. It's all fair game." The young officer shifted uncomfortably as the camera focused on him, while his partner tried to maintain authority. The atmosphere shifted again, now charged with more than just tension. Now it was accountability, and the stakes felt higher than ever. The older officer took a deep breath, clearly weighing his options. "All right," he said, his voice clipped. "If you're so sure of your rights, then you can go. But next time, don't make things harder than they need to be." The tension in his tone betrayed his frustration, but the man didn't waver. "Thank you, officer," he replied calmly, stepping toward his car. But as the officers turned to leave, the man with the camera spoke up. "Before you go, can I get your badge numbers? Just for the record." The question hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. The older officer froze for a moment, his jaw tightening. The younger one hesitated, glancing at his partner, before quietly stating his number. As the officers walked back to their patrol car, the man by the car looked at the one recording and gave a faint smile. "Funny how things change when you know your rights," he said. But just as the camera panned away, the sound of the patrol car's speaker crackled to life. "Dispatch to Unit 12. Report of a suspicious individual matching description nearby." The officers exchanged a quick look before speeding off, leaving everyone in stunned silence. The man glanced at the camera, shaking his head. "Looks like the story isn't over after all." As the patrol car disappeared around the corner, the man stood for a moment, letting out a slow breath. "You handled that well," the man with the camera said, lowering his phone. "Not everyone knows how to stay that calm." The man nodded, brushing off the tension. "It's not about winning. It's about standing your ground without making it worse." The small group of onlookers began to disperse, the moment fading back into the rhythm of the quiet street. The woman walking her dog gave a small wave, murmuring, "Good for you," before continuing down the sidewalk. The man got into his car, pausing to thank the one who had recorded. "People need to see this stuff. It's not about creating drama. It's about understanding our rights." With that, he drove away, the street falling silent again. The incident was over, but the lessons it carried lingered, a reminder of the power of calm conviction.